Is the economy going into a recession? It depends. We, just speaking for America, the US is like a freaking big country. We have 350 million people. The economy of the state of Texas is bigger than your economy in Canada.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Uncensored Direct Marketing. Today, I have Gene Marks. Gene is a regular contributor to Washington Times, Philadelphia Inquirer, Guardian, Forbes, Entrepreneur Mag, The Hill. I mean, I feel like we can keep on going, Gene. And Gene is a subject matter expert for small and medium-sized businesses. He has over 100,000 Twitter followers and just a lot of people who are following him on social media in general. And obviously, the reason that he's an expert, because obviously he's been helping a lot of businesses for many, many years, but he also has a background in accounting, which is extremely important. Finance and accounting is a very important part of running a business successfully, at least. And usually people who are good with numbers can really help build a business and make it better. So thank you so much, Gene, for hopping on today. I'm really excited, obviously, because of all the kind of different facets of business that you have helped and visited and so forth. And I know everybody listening is going to get a lot of value just on kind of basic operations and the finance part of their business.
Now, my big question to you, Maria, though, is if the podcast is uncensored, can we use profanity? Can we curse away?
Of course. We welcome it. Anything that gets your point across.
We'll try and keep this civil and tame and professional. That's fine. And I appreciate you, mentioning my accounting background, but I just want to give a warning to anybody listening that I am like the world's worst accountant. So you don't want me for me, like. If it's close enough, it's good enough. And that's not exactly what you want from an accountant, but.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah.
So it does help.
The good thing though, is that when you have a background in this and, I studied accounting, I think I got a D. Like, to be fair, like I was terrible, but there are principles that kind of stuck into my head. And that really the boring, like we call it the boring part of the business. You know what I mean?
It's like the most important part of the business.
Exactly. Like I like to do podcasts. I like to talk to my customers. I like to do analysis of businesses and so forth. I don't want to talk about my taxes. I really don't care, but a basic knowledge of how, everything works is really, really important.
I got to tell you something, Maria, like I've been running my company now, since 1994, for God's sake. I can't believe it's been that long, but, and we have a lot of clients, and, my best clients are the ones that knew their books really well. They knew how to buy something for $1 and sell it for $3. And although I've met so many people like yourself who are so smart and innovative, and you've got energy and you're into creating and all that kind of stuff, I still have to, say to you, if you're going to run a business, I mean, you got to add the numbers. I mean, it's business is math, so I agree. That's why it's an important background to have. And for anybody listening to this, I mean, if you feel weak in accounting or financial stuff, you should get some help with it as well. It's like super, super important for any kind of business, particularly any kind of online business that you're running,
Yeah. And I mean, I think I'm seeing a big trend of, micro COOs or COOs that are now kind of just doing little kind of micro projects for a lot of companies, because
like
some
outsourced.
Outsource COOs, because you don't necessarily need a COO full time, but you need somebody like for 10 hours a week to kind of get things organized. So this is obviously a big thing. And I think a lot of people who are very creative and very good at running their businesses, they don't want to deal with the numbers because it's not.
I'll give you. I mean, my wife runs a little nonprofit. She has like 5 employees, and it's been growing. And she's weak in accounting, and so she hired somebody off of LinkedIn that gives her, like you said, like 5 or 10 hours a week. And he's like a senior guy, but the guy lives in New York and he's retired, but he knows his numbers and he wants something to do. And she said he's been like a lifesaver. Okay. I mean, he keeps an eye on her, looks over the books, reviews financials. I mean, every business has to have a decent financial person. It's super, super important.
Yeah, for sure, for growth. So, I mean, talking about financials and talking about, the state of how things are going in 2023, I tend to not be a doom and gloom kind of person. I know a lot of people are in this, like, the world is going to end. We're going through a depression. Things are going to, implode and so forth. I think there's opportunity in every era. I think even, when things are not going well, some people will still thrive. I'm just wondering, if you can give us a quick kind of summary of where you see things going kind of for small business. And also, I know it's a big concern, but interest rates and inflation and how that can affect your business, whether you're running, an e-commerce shop selling supplements or whether you have a physical business, this is obviously things that you need to keep in mind.
Sure, fair enough. Now I know you. I mean, you're out of Canada, but I'm assuming your audience is all like North America, or is it
Yeah,
mostly
mainly American, but we have listeners, guys. Share it all around the world. We want everybody to listen, but mainly, Direct Paynet, like my company, we deal mainly with Americans.
Right. So, I mean, that's definitely helpful because people ask that question all the time. And first of all, whenever you ask an economist or an academic or even somebody like me that covers the economy, please know that we don't know what the hell we're talking about. We proved that back in 2008 and 2009 when the economy collapsed. Our banks are proving it right now. We got the smartest people in the world supposedly running banks, and they're collapsing because of bad financial decisions they made. And everybody's trying. And then of course we have this like global pandemic, which turned the world upside down. So in the defense of the smartest economists that have MBAs from Ivy League schools, they are even McGill. They are. Still, there's only so much they can deal with. So everybody's trying to predict what's very, very hard for them to predict. So that's number one that I want to observe for you. I can tell you what my clients and my readers and my my community are telling me, and based on the data that I look at, and it comes down to this: is the economy going into a recession? It depends, Maria. It depends. We just speaking for America. The U.S. is like a freaking big country. We have 350 million people. The state of Texas, the economy of the state of Texas is bigger than your economy in Canada. Just the state of Texas.
I believe it.
Yeah, and the state of California is bigger than the UK. The state of Florida is bigger than like Mexico. The state of North Carolina is bigger than Sweden. And I only bring that up because I'm a big fan of ABBA and they're from Sweden. So, so it's a big country. So depending on where you are in the country, what industry you're in, it depends on whether you're suffering or not. So like when people look at housing and real estate, there are struggles in the Midwest with housing and also in states like Illinois and New York. But meanwhile, like Texas and Florida have been booming, just like South Carolina has been booming, Manufacturing has been declining, and it's for the past 6 months have been in decline. Orders are down nationally. Inventory is rising. That's sort of across the board. But then the services industry is like crushing it. Business services and consumer services are have been growing at a very, very nice pace. Retail and restaurants have recovered from the pandemic, and the airlines are back. But meanwhile, like convention traffic in Vegas is down like 15%. You know what I mean? Like, So the tech industry has been laying off a zillion people, but meanwhile, like others that are in consumer goods have been doing okay, and the consumer keeps spending. So there's all this conflicting, data that's going around. The overall sense is that we are in a bit of a slowdown. It is not anything that people should be panicking about. Most of my clients and the industry groups I speak to, Maria, are, whether they're selling into the U.S. online or not, are again not panicked, but they are aware and concerned of the slowdown in the economy. Interest rates. It's all about interest rates. All about interest rates. Inflation, started it. So the Fed has been raising it. The Fed's federal funds rate, which was 0.25% a year ago. That's like the rate that the Federal Reserve charges banks to loan it money. It went from 0.25%. It's now at 5%, and it's going to go up even higher in just a year. It like jumped 20 times. So
in 1 year?
In 1 year.
Wow.
So now, and it just, when people say like, what's the effect of interest rates has on businesses, it's not immediate. It takes time for it to have that effect. And the time, and we're starting to see it now. So the prime rate in the US right now is at 8%. The Fed raises interest rates again, that prime rate's going to go up. So a lot of businesses, and I'm not talking about startups or growth mode businesses, they have their own challenges getting capital. But even existing companies are now, to borrow money, it's costing them like 9, 10, 11%. And I have clients being like, hey man, like that's too expensive for me, or I'm not going to buy that piece of equipment now or hire those people because it doesn't make sense with interest rates this high. So they don't, or they put it off. So that has this impact, on the economy. That's where we're at right now, is this sort of period. But it's not, I'm like you, I mean, it's not doom and gloom. And the reason why is because long before you and I were born, there were business owners running businesses in the times of Cleopatra and Cleisthenes and Demosthenes. And they are, business owners for years, have through centuries have been dealing with high interest rates and high inflation and slowing economies. And the smart ones navigate their way around them and carry on. And the ones that aren't so good at running a business fail and take a job somewhere else.
Well, I mean, the interesting thing that and what I hear from this and what I experience as well as a business owner and, when the economy contracts, there's some industries that do really, really well. Yeah. So on the payment processing side, it's just a matter of us kind of diverting and saying, okay, well, we don't want these types of clients. Now we're going to try to get these types of clients because these are the ones that are doing volume. But the thing that comes out is that, and the people who are generally most scared are usually people who may not be as talented as they think they are. The people who are scared also don't have maybe as much training as they need, don't have as much, maybe they're relying a lot on marketing and not an actual product. You know what I mean? Like we say this all the time that, the good old days of like buying traffic on Facebook and literally selling anything like a lip gloss would make you a ton of money. Well, now you actually have to have a strategy, you have to have a product, you actually have to have, good marketing. And at the end of the day, if your product sucks, it's going to sell when times are good, but when times are tough, people are going to be looking at it and be like, yeah, I don't think this is, something that I want. So again, a lot of businesses, I feel like what I call it is I call it, they're cutting out the fat. The people who are just not as, contributing as much as they should. So if you are a person that gets cut, not necessarily that you're not as valuable, but it's time to look at your skills, sharpen them.
It's funny that you say that because I literally just wrote a piece. I write for The Guardian every week. And so I wrote my piece today and it'll come out on Sunday. And it was about that specific topic. And it was about how the pendulum is swinging back. For years, the past few years, it's been everything about the worker and workers protesting companies and workers, quiet quitting and, basic Mondays or, whatever, like people like not wanting to like, it was all pro worker. And then the economy starts sliding down. And what do companies do when the economy starts to slide? They can workers. That's just what happens. For sure. And who are the first people that they go after? Well, it's the people that are usually the biggest pains in the neck, or the complainers, the quiet quitters, the whatever, and also the ones that aren't providing them like return on investment. And you always, if you're working at a company, you always have to be looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, like, am I making my employer money? Am I valuable? Like what I'm doing, can I be like replaced really easily? And am I a pain in the ass? And if you can be honest with yourself, you might.
That's a good one. That, being honest with yourself, and also, I mean, again, if they're cutting out 10% and you're one of the 10% that's being cut, you gotta, you face the music. Why are you one of the 10%? If you're, like you said, if you're making somebody money or if you're contributing to whatever they need, you're going to be one of the last ones to go. You're not going to be one of the first ones to go. So again, it's also, I like, what you just said. It's kind of the balance of power is shifting now back a little bit. I did feel as a business owner, hiring people, especially the last couple of years, that we got to a level at some point, at least in North America. I know in third world countries, it's a little bit different and in secondary economies, but it was getting like the demands sometimes were getting a little bit ridiculous from certain candidates. And like, you could tell by, if you're watching guys on YouTube, like my annoyance at this, because I'm like, if the field that I'm working in is fintech, it's a difficult field, meaning it's difficult to find people who understand this world. If I'm going to spend my time, getting a junior, especially if you're a junior, to teach you all this stuff, and you write me a list of demands of 15 things that you want before I hire you, it's probably not going to happen. But I am, as a business owner, a little bit happy that there's a little bit of pushback because, it was getting, you were paying six figures for people who had 2 years of experience. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense.
The compensation levels are really high. And, the ADP reports every month on their employment data. And they were showing that people that switch jobs were getting like 15% bumps in their salary, and the average business paying 7-8%. And then everybody wants 4-day work weeks. And,
they want to work from home, and they want to work flex hours, and they want to have unlimited sick days. PTO, and they want, paternity leave. When they get a puppy, they want days off, Oh, wow. I haven't heard that paternity leave.
It's also a thing. So now all these big companies, Google and, PayPal and Microsoft and Amazon, they're all cutting all that stuff, back out. You know what I mean? Like, because it was just a little bit too much. I'm not saying that you don't, and this as well, of course you value your workers. But I do, I mean, and we appreciate business owners really do appreciate their workers, and I get that. But sometimes I just don't think that people coming out of college or younger workers or whatever, I don't realize that it is the business owners that are ones taking the risk.
Yes.
So we're the ones buying the insurance. We're the ones that have to make payroll. We're the ones that, if we go out of business, we're the ones that are screwed. The employees themselves can change jobs. They're not taking any risk.
Yeah.
So, and so it's been a few years, a little bit of demonizing. And then of course, it's been a very pro worker government in Washington as well. I think they have really good and valuable programs. But it's been very pro union, and the Department of Labor is pro worker people. And so businesses sense that, they sense that. And I'm not saying, good or bad, but businesses tend to take more risks and invest more, hire more, expand when they feel like they're in more of a pro business environment. And if the government isn't going to regulate them to death. And it's just the narrative has been over the past couple of years that it hasn't been that way. So my clients are like, we're just kind of, circling the wagons a little bit and, kind of waiting things out for a couple of years to see if, things turn around.
Well, I mean, for myself, personal experience as a business owner is, like I said, I'm a little bit glad because I also feel like when I got out of school and I was, going and getting jobs and so forth, like the opportunity to learn from somebody that, was 20 years experience running their own business would have been something that excited me a lot. As a business owner, when I'm hiring, let's say a junior EA or something like that, it's like, coming with these crazy salary demands and feeling like I owe that person, where they're not seeing the opportunity that you're going to learn so much. You could take this and in 5 years from now, multiply your income by 50 because you're getting all this stuff. But anyway, I mean, it's going to go back and forth, and it always has. And different generations have different views on this. I know the younger generation is probably listening and saying, "Hey, I am all for obviously everybody having some flexibility and so forth." It's just a matter of kind of revaluing, I should say, business owners, and like you said, the risks that they're taking and the stress that's involved with this type of commitment, right?
Sometimes I just have to add, because you bring up a really good point about the different generations. First of all, every generation complains about the generation after them, right?
Yes.
I mean, isn't it?
Those young people don't know
what they're talking. And then the generation like those old, fogies, they don't know what they're talking, whatever. So that's just always happens. So there's nothing new. There's no news here. The other thing is, I have kids in their 20s. I have 3 kids that are like, in their mid 20s. They all have jobs. They work pretty hard, and I know their friends, and I come across a lot of people that are millennials and Gen Zers, a lot of hardworking, really good, people. Sometimes I feel like, Maria, like it's just like you got that one case of that millennial who's like some complainer, and then the media grabs on it, and that's what makes like all the headlines. You know what I mean? And so sometimes I wonder if we, if you and I mean, no offense, but if we're being duped by what we see online, which might not really be reality, because when I see my reality, it's not the same as what I read online. Do you know what I'm saying?
I agree, and I think my parents shitted on my generation. I'm shitting on you. I would say I'm probably one of the least. I don't shit that much on younger generations because I remember what it's like, and I feel like the generations that are younger are actually more efficient.
Yeah, they're actually nicer than my generation.
Yes, and they're more polite. Like when I go to retail, the younger people are usually a lot more polite and hello and welcoming and so forth. So I have nothing but good things to say about everybody in terms of every generation. But everybody, even we have some older people, some boomers and stuff like that are, I call them, the constant negative Nancy's. It's always, everything always sucks. And I feel like that's one thing about the older generation that I feel I hear a lot, that's like constant complaining and constant, conspiracy theory, and like they're out to get us and all this stuff. And it's like, and then we have the younger people that obviously are more positive and so forth. But, I think, with the economy, kind of tying it back to the economy and how things are going, and, businesses tightening their belt and so forth, I think a lot of people just start becoming a little bit more realistic and start realizing what opportunities are out there and start, working a little bit harder. So I see it, it can't always be roses and growth. It has to have contraction, so we can kind of look introspectively and be able to decide, like who's not doing a good job, who needs to be retooled, how can we be more efficient? And every time there's a contraction, right after there's a big growth, because
you're right. You're right.
learn,
Because the world is cyclical, because it's cyclical. You brought up a good point earlier that I just want to emphasize as well when you were talking about, going after, certain opportunities. And one thing I do have to say, like if you're in, direct sales, if you're in e-commerce, I like to always tell people to follow the money. And right now, I mean, support it or not, there's like almost $2 trillion worth of money that's going to certain industries. There's some, legislation that was passed in the past 2 years in the US, the infrastructure bill that's going all towards infrastructure and construction, the Inflation Reduction Act, which is going towards all sorts of green and environmental products, and the CHIPS Act, which is like almost $300 billion for like chip making manufacturers and the whole industry. And those are like, the money's like flowing to those industries. And you think like, if you want to go after new markets and, and pursue that, I just wanted to add, those are some industries that my clients are looking at really closely, seeing if they can sell into those markets. You follow the money.
Okay. So, I mean, talking a little bit more, kind of getting a little bit more tactical and giving, everybody listening some advice, whether, keep in mind, if you're listening, whether you're a business owner or whether you work for somebody, knowing more about the business that you work in and how you can contribute and give advice is always helpful. I always tell people, if you're in marketing, whether you're buying traffic, you're a copywriter, you're heading HR, these are all useful things because you understand the landscape. So, sure. Gene, can you tell us a little bit, what are a couple of things that business owners should be doing right now to kind of prepare for, a contraction or, call it a correction?
Yeah. First of all, a lot of people try to give advice about being in a recession or a growth. And I was like, well, watch your dollars or cut your overhead or save your money, which is like, okay, Frank, tell me something new. Yeah. So I can tell you what my clients are doing and what my community's doing. Okay.
We want real world.
Here's some real world advice in a contracting economy. Really smart business owners cut product lines. That's for starters. What they do is they look at all the products that they are selling, because in a growing economy, you're adding in everything and you're trying to please everybody. But the smart ones are looking at margins and they're saying, you know what? There have been numerous studies that have found that like 25% of most companies' products generate 90% of their revenues. So what the hell are you doing selling the other 80% of your products? So I'm just telling you, my smartest clients are right now looking through all of their products and cutting. They're either outsourcing them, they're finding alternative suppliers. They're making sure that none of the products that they cut are maybe a favorite product of a big customer. So they are careful about that. But take a hard look at the products you're selling and cut them. That's number one. Number two, I'm seeing a lot of my clients practice shrinkflation. Are you familiar with shrinkflation?
No, tell us what you mean.
Shrinkflation is nothing to do with our weight. It is shrinkflation is where you sell a little less of something, but for the same price. So if you buy a bag of Doritos now, 2 years ago, it was 9.75 ounces. Now it's 9.25 ounces, but it's the same price.
Same price, yeah.
You buy hefty mega packs. If you go into a Walmart, used to be 90 bags in the box, and now it's 80 bags in the box. And I heard that Domino's Pizza are now including less chicken wings in their orders, like 8 versus 10 that they normally did, but for the same price. Now, I don't know who is getting chicken wings from Domino's because it's a pizza place, but maybe they deserve
chicken
it.
From Domino's freaks me out. I'm like, why would you?
It doesn't sound like something I would get, but okay, listen, there's some people like it, but they're paying the same and they're getting a little bit less,
Well, you did say that it has nothing to do with our waistline, but you're lying because it does, right, because you're eating less, which is actually a good thing. The economy is putting you on a diet, guys. The economy is putting you on a diet. Let's see.
That was Domino's intentions. If you would ask them, they're like, we care about our customers. We don't want them to see overweight. So we're just going to give them less chicken wings in the box. Of course, we're going to charge them
less Doritos is good for everybody. So
it's the same thing if you stay in a hotel. Like, it used to be you go to like these hotels and there would be, like the lotions and liquids and chocolates. And now you have to beg for somebody to come and clean your room and you're paying extra for a towel. Sure. And now there's like the big pump bottles of like the body spray in the shower. It used to be like nice individual soaps, whatever. Anyways, they're all cutting back. But of course, hotels have decreased their room rates, right? No, I'm just kidding. They have not. They've kept them the same. So shrinkflation is another, like, in other words, if there's anything that you can sell or any services you can provide, one area for people who are selling online, freight is a thing. I mean, even Amazon is starting to monkey around with what their free freight is that they're providing to, to their visitors, because they're realizing that, maybe it's a free freight, or free delivery if you're within 50 miles, but maybe it's a nominal charge if it's a little bit more than that. It's all about protecting your margins. Do you know what I mean? So, so you got to look at what you're selling or the services that you're providing. This is just what my clients are doing.
Well, it's working, right? So okay, so then this is good sage advice. And, we have a lot of online marketers in, the supplement space, and, or course owners. And this applies, right? If you have like 30 supplements, take a look at what your supplements you're selling and then just keep 10 or whatever number kind of makes sense, right? The more overhead you have, the more money you're spending unnecessarily.
It's all about margins. It is all about margins. You're absolutely right. And in the final, I have more, but the final piece of advice I can give you when it's just, what I'm seeing is, businesses today have something that like our parents and grandparents didn't have back in like the late 70s, early 80s, when like the last inflationary period was. And we have data, like back in the day, it was like the manual bookkeeping systems and whatever. Today, people have QuickBooks and Sage and Xero and Epicor and Dynamic, whatever. We've all got, so I'm just telling my smartest clients, man, they're digging into their data, and they are targeting price increases based on what the data is telling them, So it's like, this has been a really good customer. We have good margins. We're not going to increase the price on this person. This person, our margins are very low, on them, and they're also kind of a pain in the neck to us. And I don't like their house, and I don't like their kid. So we're gonna increase, our prices on that guy. So they're looking at the actual, some of my clients are increasing prices, based on regions. They're increasing it based on product lines. They're increasing based on customer volume. So I guess like in a slowing economy, if you're trying to recover costs and you are trying to increase prices, you got to do it very strategically, and you've got the data to do that with. And speaking of data, you also have the data to communicate. So again, our parents, our grandparents didn't have Outlook and Gmail and Salesforce and Zoho, and we have all that. And my smartest clients are like heavily communicating with their customers. Like, this is our lead time. This is our delivery time. This is, we are going to have a price increase in 3 months, and we're giving you that heads up. And, and it's appreciated, and it keeps them close. So leverage your data, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Well, I mean, talking about data, and I have to tie this in. You're a business expert. You help all these companies kind of tighten ship and be more productive and so forth. So I'm wondering, talking about data and how it can help you and so forth, there's people like you can gather so much data, but sometimes it's a matter of how you digest the data, not necessarily having it. Cause for me, I have data for a lot of clients, and I can get so granular that sometimes when I'm doing consulting agreements, they're looking at me like, what the hell is she talking about? Like, I don't, so you always have to pick and choose what data is important. Now, is there anything that we can leverage? I'm going to bring AI up because AI is the new kid on the block this year, and everybody's talking about it. But is there anything that we can do to leverage AI to help us kind of digest data, or tools that you're seeing your customers use with AI that help, kind of navigate their business?
So I've got two pieces of advice when it comes to AI. Actually, three. First of all, just starting off, we're probably all going to die at the hands of AI. So let's just get that out in the open here right now. So let's enjoy it. No, I'm just kidding. I am, like I said, glasses half full. I fully believe that all the terrifying predictions, as human beings, I was looking back in the archives of newspapers. You would not believe the terrifying predictions people were making about the telephone and the telegraph. You know what I mean? Like, people were panicked about that, 100 years ago. So, I'm not to belittle the issue, but it's an issue that I think will be addressed. To answer your question, though, there's two things you can do with AI in your business. Number one, I do recommend that you explore ChatGPT. I do like it a lot. I wrote a piece in Forbes a couple of weeks ago of like 27 things you can do with ChatGPT right now in your business. You should get familiar with it. You should play with it. I am telling you, I have clients that are using it to compose emails, to help them write HR policies, to help them write blogs for their, for their site. I mean, Maria, you could be using ChatGPT to write blogs like 1 or 2 blogs a day on your site, and therefore it can transcribe this podcast as well. It will, all of that helps with your SEO and attract people to your website. So it'll write. There's people in the real estate industry that are using ChatGPT to write better descriptions of properties. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of really cool uses for it. You should get used to it. That's number one. Number two is your question about AI and how to use it or what to do. You don't right now. You wait. People say like, oh, should I be like writing an application using AI or whatever? If you're using, I mentioned some of the accounting software, but if you're using Salesforce, if you're using Microsoft Office, if you're using Google's business apps, trust me when I tell you that big tech will come to the rescue. They are all developing AI applications as we speak, So it's not something you have to be proactive about. What you need to do is you need to be aware of new features in the applications that you own, to beat the shit out of your vendors and ask them what features they're including and what they're doing, and leverage, because that's how all of your software vendors, the people providing you with those applications, that's how they're going to stay in business and stay ahead, is by leveraging AI and coming out with whatever type of automation that will continue to make you pay your monthly fee for the software. So, be aware and ask, and then leverage the features that they're going to be providing to you. That is my best piece of advice. And they're coming. And Microsoft is coming out with stuff. I mean, I don't know, Maria, how deeply you read into it, but like, it's crazy. Like, Microsoft's coming out with stuff, and so is Google. Like, Google will look at all of you'll say to Google, go through all of my emails, find everybody with blue eyes and green hair who's a Canadians fan that bought this product in the past year, send them all an email using my frame of, voice, you know what I mean? Include a joke in it. And then when anybody replies, make sure that you create a task for me in my calendar to follow up with that person. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to tell it what to do, and it's just going to go and do it for you. It's crazy stuff. So I look forward to it.
I mean, I think, I look forward to it too, because I would really love to be able to just talk and create automations instead of trying to figure out different softwares. Like, I was using different email softwares, and, I had hired somebody to do it. It was a mess. I couldn't follow anything. I'm like, I don't know who's getting what. There's just emails being thrown out everywhere. It was a disaster. I would love to be able to just, with my live voice, say, when somebody does this, can you just schedule an email for that and stuff. So I think, in general, people are afraid of AI, but like you said, tying it back to your conversation, to your comment about the telephone, every single new technology, like, I mean, in the 90s with email and the internet's going to ruin, there's not going to be any jobs anymore. And now, like, literally there's nobody to work. They're everywhere I go, I see help on the side. Everybody needs workers. So
in 19th century England, there were people that tapped on windows to wake people up in the morning. That was like their job, because there was no alarm clocks, and there was a blacksmith on every other block, I mean, come on, stuff changes, everybody. It's for the good.
That's good.
What I mean?
Yeah. You get to do more. You enjoy your life. You learn new skills. I mean, there's no issue there.
All you have to do is look at the tax code, and that will convince you that people will find something to do to keep them busy. Okay.
I mean, it would be great. I think, government using these types of technologies, like, whether it's the IRS you're dealing with, or the CRA here in Canada, or different government body agencies, there is a lot of time wasted on things like, most people have very easy returns, easy taxes. And it's like, they work, they have, their 401k, they have a couple of things. Like, there's so much time and energy spent on things that are just irrelevant in terms of, taxation and so forth. So, I mean, I think all I want to say ChatGPT because I think the lead, they are. I'm not thinking they're the leader.
They're the most well-known brand right now.
I feel like, what Google did to Microsoft is now getting back done to them. So,
It's true.
It is what it is. They were a little bit quicker to the game, but again, it's the theme obviously here is that it's just going to create more opportunities. Embrace it, try to learn it. There's no need to be afraid of anything. You're not going to break it. It's not going to come kill you for now. Maybe as Jean was saying, maybe they're going to take us over soon. But for now, let's just kind of use it. I mean, the thing that does get me a little bit afraid. I think the technology is going a lot faster than most people are realizing what their capabilities are. Like people who are, voice prints, biometrics are very easily copied. And I think that raises a big concern in terms of, just identification, identity theft, and all this stuff. And I think that's what society is going to have to try to, kind of manage and so forth, because, people call their banks and now their voice print could be used as their ID. Well, that doesn't work because ChatGPT can create a whole freaking script of you talking and get that done. I'm curious, just, as we're talking a little bit more on kind of the business side of things again, and, contractions and so forth, you were mentioning there are certain industries earlier that do well and so forth. Do you have like a list of things, or do you have something? Let's say if you're in a business that's not doing too well, I guess maybe this is a better way of positioning it. If you're in a business that is generally like during a recessionary period not doing too well, what can you do to either kind of revive it, or should you switch gears, or what do you recommend for people that are kind of seeing their ship sinking at this time?
So there's, I wrote a book about this a few years ago about people trying to navigate their way through a recession. It was based on people that were navigating their way through the 2008 and 2009 recession. And like everything in life, there's no one answer. There's you just can't say there's like a silver bullet that's going to say like, oh, this is what you do. It kind of depends on your business. I talked to some people that shut their business down altogether temporarily. And lived off their savings for a year or two until they can get back in action. I have other people that completely revamped what they were selling. I spoke to other people who partnered with other companies and shared, products together and services together to try and see their way through. I have others that invested in either new product lines or people to sell, particularly if they're in a service business, Okay. So there's no like one specific answer as to what to do if you're in like a down business. I can say that if you think that the business is a recoverable business, if it's the kind of business that it's suffering because of the recession, but then once things do turn around, it will recover because, historically businesses like yours have been around, then it's a matter of waiting it out. And if you have got the financial resources to hunker down and wait something like that out, that might be your best course of action. But again, it's just I wish I could give you a better answer, but it just depends on your business.
Oh, I can appreciate that. And I think that can, guys, if you have any questions for Jean, specific questions, pop them down below or send us an email. I also want to link, that Forbes article that you mentioned before. So we're going to pop that in for you guys down below. Just in closing. And I'm curious your thought, in terms of, in terms of, we're not going to say where you lean and so forth, but government involvement in business and how much they're helping, how much they don't help, how much help should we seek? What are your thoughts on that? Right now, at least for the last couple of years with the pandemic and all that stuff that happened in Canada specifically, it was almost a free for all. And myself being, a little bit more conservative minded is looking at this and it's like, you're just giving free money away to people without any question, without, this is obviously going to have a consequence. And obviously now we're seeing that consequence of like inflation and interest rates and all that. But I'm curious, what's your thought on, like government involvement and how much can we bail people out before we let a couple of people hurt, I guess is the good question.
Yeah. First of all, during the pandemic in the US, I think the government did really good things at the outset. They learned from the Depression that if they didn't provide liquidity, the financial system would fail. So they did. They provided $1 trillion of liquidity, both the Treasury Department and the Federal Reserve. So banks carried on. They provided payments. Come on. It was a fucking pandemic. There were people that were given, unemployment insurance. There was paycheck protection for businesses. There was tons of fraud, but it all had to get rolled out real fast. I actually think they stepped up and did the right thing there. But then, as governments will do, it then got out of control. So, I mean, it was literally, just in early May when the U.S. government declared the pandemic travel restrictions are over. Literally in early May of 2023.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So,
oh wow.
Yeah. So, because there was up until then, some, people traveling into the US from certain countries still had to show proof of vaccination, for God's sake,
Wow.
So, yeah. And that was all done because it kept a lot of stimulus payments and pandemic related payments coming along. There was trillions of dollars of legislation that was passed and funding passed that was connected to the pandemic. That was really just a cover for a lot of, political agenda type programs. So it got to be too much. And now we're paying the price for it. We just have too much money washing around in the system, chasing too little buyers, and that's what causes inflation, is when you have an oversupply of something. So the government does have a role. I mean, and I just straight out, I'm a Republican. I'm a right of center guy. I'm not an ultra right guy. I'm a fiscal conservative, but I'm socially liberal. I don't really care what your gender is or what you do, behind closed doors. That's to each his own. And there were certain things that government, I'm not a crazy supporter of believer that the world's going to blow up because of climate change. Although I certainly have the same concerns as everybody else that, we have to be looking after our environment. So I don't think we should be doing everything as fast as what some governments are doing right now, because that's too fast. It's causing problems. Supply of oil is the biggest thing.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean California passed, they passed laws that are saying if you run motor, lawn mowers and small motor vehicles and you're driving them, you can't buy them anymore after a certain date. I think it's 2030 maybe, or 20, I forget what date it is. It has to be electric, So the whole landscaping industry is all up in arms about it. And I get it. But at the same time, if you take small incremental steps, and if a government does that and leads it in a period of time that's reasonable, people can adjust, and move on. And big things don't happen without the government being involved. Look at ChatGPT and AI. I mean, the government needs to regulate it, just like they regulate our food and our pharmaceuticals and our agriculture. This is something I think the government has to regulate, that it's in the common good.
Well, so, I agree and disagree just on that point. I think that government involvement is important, but the government usually doesn't understand as much as the industry. Sure. So, the people who are very intelligent that kind of are high level people in these different types of industries, like weather, AI, and so forth, usually don't work for the government. They work for private companies. So the problem is oftentimes is that the government mislegislates certain things, right? And that's the key here, is that I'm all for for example crypto and that whole sphere, and ChatGPT and AI should be regulated, but we have people. We need a mix of people in there that are actually understanding what this technology does, because oftentimes when something new comes out, we hear regulation. I'm like, that doesn't even make any sense. I understand the crypto space quite well. And I'm like, there's a couple of things that they can do to make things a lot easier for everybody and make it clear. And a lot of the big crypto companies want the legislation because they're like, we don't want to be in this gray zone. We just want to know what we're allowed to do and we'll follow the rules,
Yeah, I agree.
So, I mean, on the government side of things, like legislation, I would say yes, with a little star, a little caveat there, that it needs to, unfortunately, the smartest people get paid way too much money to work for government. And that's the issue. I think
we're pretty smart. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to move to Canada. And do you have to be a Canadian citizen to be you can run for prime minister and I'll be your minister of the treasury. How does that sound?
That's great. Yeah, no, I always say, the best people who are going to run the country are people who, accountants and business people and people I went back to university, in my early 30s, and I was an entrepreneur, and I figured, let me go back to university and try to get a diploma in entrepreneurship. I'd been running a business at that point for a little while, went to a pretty big university, went to a couple of classes. I'm like, this guy doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. He literally does not know what he's talking. I'm like, let me get up and teach this class, because this has nothing to do, when you're reading a sales manual, and it's if the customer says this, I'm like, no, no, that doesn't work like that. So, I mean, it's just, like I said, unfortunately, but it's not those who cannot teach, but sometimes it does happen, and we're seeing that a lot more. But, hopefully people listening to podcasts, and there's so much free content available out there that you could, self-educate with the right sources, with, a little bit of guidance. So Jean, I mean, I thank you very much. I think, you're a wealth of knowledge in everything kind of finance, business related. So we are going to link down below, a couple of the articles that you mentioned. And I'm looking forward to reading more of your articles. And guys, if you're running small to medium sized business, follow Jean, make sure you listen to his advice, because he's helping a lot of people kind of navigate these tough waters. And when things are good, it's also not a time to put your foot off the pedal, right? It's also time to make sure that you're ready for these times. So again, thank you, Jean, for sharing all this wisdom, and have yourself a great day.
Maria, you're awesome. Thank you for having me on. Hope to see you again. Take care.
Thank you. Hope you found today's session valuable. If you have any questions for me or just want to connect, please feel free to visit my website, mariasparagis.com. That's MariaSparagis.com. I'd love to hear what you're working on, so drop me a line on any hot button issues your business is experiencing. And remember, don't worry about failure. You only have to be right once.